So the introduction was a little bit short, as was my introduction or preparation before this meeting. I heard, I think yesterday, 4:15, that I had a slot today. I was on the backup list. So I spent my evening preparing the slides. So I did not have time to put in too many egg jokes. There's 8, so there's like bonus points for everybody that can find all 8. So I'm Sebastiaan, the Director of Data Science and AI for UI. This is not a pitch, not a product presentation. This is just like a talk about a small hacky project, like a Friday afternoon project that sort of spiraled out of control a little bit and is now at sort of moderately sized scale in production. I thought it would be fun to just share a little bit of those experiences. It is about generative AI. For those of you who are actively working with that, it can be quite challenging to get that in actual production. Very easy to pilot, not so much to actually make it work at scale. So I thought I'd share like a small story about that. One of my heroes is Adam Savage. This project is much in the philosophy of Adam Savage of just make it work and then see what happens later. It's probably not technical enough for the real techies here. It's probably not business-oriented enough for the business-oriented people here. It's sort of like in between, as am I in a sense. And it kind of shares a couple of stories. So if you're missing this egg joke, then like you're not going to make it till the end anyhow. So in a sense, I always look at generative AI as sort of like a classroom full of children. It's awesome. You get them for free. They're very eager to work for you, but they're also quite limited in their capability. They're still very much learning the world. So what can you do as a company with sort of infinite children without sort of all the child labor issues that might come with that? It's not so easy, right? There are certainly things that you can do with it, also very limited. AI is moving at a rapid pace, so maybe it's not like sort of basisschool anymore, but maybe already like middelbare school, but still, right? What can you do with middelbare school infinite people? It's not so much, but there's certainly some things. So this is a very typical issue that a lot of our clients have. So UI has a long tradition in the e-commerce space. We have a lot of clients that have web shops with lots of products. If you have a web shop with lots of product, you have lots of products that have shit data, basically, right? So this is what you want. You want like nice image and some content and nice lists of features. But in reality, you have much, much less. You probably just have some supplier that maybe sent you some XML or Excel files some time ago, and you just have like a couple of basic data points, and it's a pain to enrich all of that data, right? Your supplier ideally should do it for you, but he is not doing it. So what are you going to do? You don't have the manpower. And as a result, your product description page looks pretty poor. We all know this from like hundreds and hundreds of websites online, of course. Not good for sales, also not good for the customer. So I was having a discussion with one of our clients, and sort of on a Friday afternoon, we were thinking like, hey, can we use generative AI to alleviate at least part of this problem? Because for most of the products, there is data out there. Right, so you can definitely do competitor scraping if you want, but even the supplier generally has their own website with data. Maybe you have technical manuals, right? So there's lots of unstructured data out there in the world. And what if we go find it, use generative AI to sort of evaluate all of that content for validity, if there's useful data, extract all of that data, put it in a single source of truth, and then from there generate content however you want. And that's exactly what we did. And as a hacky way, we just started very, very small. So I just asked him, oh, just like send me a couple of those PDPs with poor data, and I'll just see what I can do. That was like Thursday afternoon. So very much in the same sense as yesterday afternoon, I heard like you have to go give a talk today. I just went home and sort of cooked up this crazy workflow. It's not so complicated. There's a lot of boxes, but basically it just consists of taking this product description page with poor data. Supplier also gave me a list of all of their suppliers, let's say sort of valid URLs that we can scrape because we didn't want to touch competitors so much in this case. Just a bunch of manuals that might contain information or not. Then we have an LLM step that basically creates from the product description page, summarizes what data is there so that we can create a search query. From the search query, we do just a basic Google search to identify, let's say, potential candidates that might contain relevant information. We filter those with the whitelist. So basically, we just rely on the Google logic to do all the scraping, so that we don't build like a custom parser or anything. We have AI look at all of the candidates, so this could be scraped websites, could be PDFs, XMLs, emails, whatever. Then we have, right, so this is evaluated by an individual LLM, each candidate individually, and then we have a second LLM step where we condense all that information in a single source of truth. And once you have that, you can generate anything you want, right? You can generate a long description, short description, list of features, list of dimensions, list goes on. So just to simplify a little bit, just me, like Thursday afternoon, thinking, okay, how am I going to make this work relatively simply with my very, very limited skill set? SERP is great, right? It's not so easy to scrape Google. If you are talking about 20 products, you can just use Google Search. It's a Python package. Hugging Face is great. So I mean, I'm a fairly heavy Hugging Face user for larger use cases. So I already have an account there. I use it a lot. But even like if you just have a free account, you can use like Llama 370B. Works awesome. So this was basically my workflow. So just use like Tesseract for PDF parsing, Hugging Face for all of my LLM steps, just a Google Python package, requests and beautiful soup. Very nice, very common to a lot of you. And just a simple CSV file. And this just worked beautifully, basically. So we took this data, it was on my previous slides as well. This is sort of like one of the in-between steps. So basically, I'm just asking the AI to generate a nice JSON for me to do a couple of evaluations. So each individual candidate is evaluated with a relevance score, some other features, right? So hard matches, soft matches. Maybe you found it. So there's like an overall relevance score that's calculated. If the relevance is over a certain threshold that you can set yourself, all of the data is scraped from that source, right? Again, might be URL, PDF, whatever. And then it's scraped in two ways, right? There's sort of like the hard features or facts about a product. Those are in a list. And then there's like a general, let's say the soft data is also scraped from the source. All done by LLMs, all done sort of autonomously, more or less. And this gets put into a single source of truth. So here you see for this particular product, it was able to identify 3 sources. I'm condensing it here a little bit for clarity, but you can, right, I'm keeping track of all of these sources, of course. And from here, you can generate all of this content. So if you, can I go back? Right, if you start here, and basically without any human supervision, you go to here, companies get very happy, generally. Of course, they want to have that. They want to be able to know that this data is accurate, right? So there's still manual verification going on here. So far, client is still checking. We haven't found a single mistake. So it took a long time to get there, but like we've checked like hundreds and hundreds of PDPs by now, and we haven't found a single mistake in the sense of having wrong data here, right? So it's saying 2 kilograms and it should be 3 or something like that. There's loads and loads of AI mistakes. Otherwise, but not, let's say, hard data facts that are wrong, which is very good. But then, of course, right, it works for 20, and now the client asks, okay, can you do it for 9,000? Because, like, my issue is not with 20 products, it's with 9,000 products. And then the world, of course, starts breaking down a little bit, because me just hobbying on Thursday afternoon, it works out great, but then right, there's rate limits. Google really doesn't like to be scraped. So 20 is fine. 50 an hour is sort of the limit. So 9,000 at 50 an hour, right? That's not going to work. Hugging Face, at least if you have a free account, it says about 1,000 requests per day. If you were calculating just now, let's say we have 10 URLs, 3 candidate PDFs. That's already 13 AI steps. Then it's condensing. It's generating 6 pieces of content, right? So you easily have, let's say, 25 LLM calls for each individual product times 9,000, right? So that's not going to work. And there's loads and loads of issues with generative AI in terms of the output, right? So I'm requesting JSON usually. So without any, let's say, optimization, we were seeing about 7% just, incorrect JSON, and about 5% stuff like, here are your results, which you don't want in your results, right? It should just, right, all of these basic things, I think loads of people are nodding here, right? This is very, very typical in your output, but very annoying if you do it 9,000 times, because you don't have the time to manually inspect everything. So what are you going to do? Oh, and also the prompt management is a nightmare because parts of the prompt are always the same for each and every step, but some are slightly different. So your whole hierarchy and modular prompting becomes a nightmare to manage at this scale because you want to do a lot of prompt engineering, if anything. So my first, again, like I like Adam Savage a lot. Some people will cry about this slide. Some people will find it hilarious. So my first thing to circumvent, let's say, Google limiting me at 50 requests per hour was just to have more IP addresses. So I was just like manually interfacing with my network adapter on my Mac, and then making hotspots with my phone and my wife's phone and my work phone, and then got me up to about 200 an hour. I mean, that got annoying quite quickly, so I gave up on that attempt. Just didn't work. But I also have I've had a couple of years in the Dutch government working on digital forensics, and I remembered, oh wait, my phone actually gets a new IP address every time it reconnects to like one of the network masts. So what if I just put my phone on flight mode and then took it off again, get a new IP address? That worked great. So there's like a small script called Automate. You can put it in your Android phone, just put my phone on flight mode every 90 seconds, and then got me up to about 9,000 a day. So that got me at least in the ballpark of being able to do 9,000 in a reasonable amount of time. Definitely wouldn't recommend anybody to do it. It's a nightmare. It breaks all the time. Google, of course, is also like looking at geolocation, these kind of things, right? So this definitely doesn't scale beyond anything like this. But to be honest, for 9,000, it kind of worked. And then Hugging Face is still pretty awesome. If you have a pro account, you can do 20,000 requests per day. They're actually quite lenient, so you can easily do 30, 40 per day. Depends a little bit on how busy it is. In the weekends, like they're a little bit more strict and stuff, but still quite okay. And this package I can highly recommend. Anybody know Fuzzy JSON? Specific package for dealing with crappy JSON out of LLMs. So it sort of like tries to identify the key issues that LLMs tend to make in doing JSON, and then write correct for them. So it's a little bit like a lazy parser. I'm getting great results with it. Results may vary. So this is still super hacky, but for 9,000 it actually worked out great. Also, what we did for this is, we changed it a little bit. So, I did the Automate thing to change my IP addresses, switch to a pro account. I mean, I already had it, but for the slides it looks nice. We added JSON and Fuzzy JSON for the parsing part, and we moved to async for the whole thing. So both the Google scraping and then all of the AI steps that we could parallelize, we did async. Beautiful example, like I have never done async before in my life. Claude is perfect at this, like just take this function and make it async. How does async work, right? So I just spent like 1.5 hours, and then I taught myself async and changed my code. It was great. And built a very simple API, so that it was a little bit easier for me to just like process all of the data and do retries, that kind of stuff. Again, like maybe 30 minutes or something to build like fast API over my code with a bit of help of Claude. I had built APIs before, but still. And like for the 20 products, it was just a notebook, a Jupyter notebook type thing. And now I broke up my code a little bit in modules, so it was a little bit easier to manage. But still, like this is like, it was like one long night of work basically, and then in the morning it was done. Had to wait for 1.5 days. My code broke down a couple of times. But then like after the weekend, 9,000 products done. And that was really awesome. So we spent a lot of time on the prompt engineering. We also had like a quite nice retry routine. So if the JSON formatting is incorrect, it retries. If there are some hard criteria, so if let's say you're asking for a product description of 200 words, something like that. If it's beyond 200 words, we just retry. So we just have a couple of relatively simple fallback mechanisms to perform retries. And this was the result for the client. So for 86% of their data, we could find sources with more data than the client already had, which is great. We were able to get at least the JSON formatting to 97% accuracy. I'm very happy with that. Leaves still 3% of products that you then need to like find out what you're going to do with that data. For now, we just left it. the client already didn't have data, so they're already quite happy with 97%. And then, so about 80% of all of the 9,000 products passed all of the QA controls in the end, so had like data that could be put on the product description pages. About 200K Hugging Face requests, and it saved the client about 1.5 FTEs of work. So they were actually actively doing a project where they had 3 people spending 6 months to manually look up all of the data, contact suppliers, go through manuals, that kind of stuff. Those 3 people were super, super happy, right? they're not scared that they get out of the job. They're just super happy that they don't have to deal with all of that boring data jobs anymore. And the entire project end to end took about 2 weeks. So I think there's probably going to be split a little bit here in the audience. There's some people that think this is just way too hacky, not production ready. I completely agree with that. At the same time, this is a production thing, right? And it's used by a company. They're super happy about it, and it is like live to end users. So in that sense, it is a production system. It just doesn't scale at all. It's probably not reusable too much. But now the question comes for the client, can you also do 180,000 products? Because we're so happy with the results, can you just do our entire catalog? And then some other client comes by like, oh yeah, but I really want to use this model, or I want to use it for a slightly different use case. And here, right, I mean, again, there's probably going to be split in the audience, but I love the approach of just like hacking it together and just increasing it on the fly. I think AI is being great, at least for me, in being able to switch that, right? Going from just non-sync to async, very easy, switch out a fast API for REST, really easy, right? So being able to leverage genAI also with my coding and changing out modules and technologies just works great, because you can quickly test a use case, and if it works, and the client asks like, hey, can you do that for 180,000 products as well? Then you can go right ahead. Of course, that also comes with its own complexities. It's over 9,000. Right, so it's just like napkin calculating, but it's like millions of API requests, over 1 billion input tokens that you need to process. So then you really start getting like, okay, so how long does it take an H100 to even process 1 billion or like 100 million output tokens? Right, those things start adding up. You need to actually put dedicated infrastructure in place, think about cost management. If you would just rent like a AWS server with, let's say, 4 or 8 H100s, right? Bill goes up quite quickly. And also my Google scraping routine just doesn't scale to 180,000, right? I mean, I would have to have, I don't know, 10 phones with airplane mode every 10 seconds or something, like it just doesn't work. So here you need to kind of redesign the system a little bit. So this is where we sort of like did the 9,000 products. And this is the solution where we ended up. So we switched to a different parser for PDF documents. If you don't know this one, highly recommend. It's basically like an LLM-based PDF parser that's much better at capturing semantic context and ignoring non-semantic, like page numbers and boring markup stuff. I've been out for, I think, two months now or something. We did switch out to OpenAI just because the batch processing for them is a lot better, right? You can just like drop them 50,000 messages at once, get the results back. That just scales a lot better with your own workflow. You can definitely do Hugging Face as well, but this worked for us a lot better. For the Google searches, if there's anybody in the audience that knows a nice free or open source project that we could use, I'm all ears, but we couldn't find one, so we're using a third party where we just pay them money. I'm not naming them because I'm not really happy with them. Otherwise, I would have. Switched out the scraper. I mean, request is great, but of course, there's a lot of websites that just don't play nice with that. So we switched out to Puppeteer, just improving our scrape results a little bit. This part's still largely the same, although there's a lot of prompt engineering on the back end. So we use a package to do all the prompt management now, so they can do versioning, merging different prompts together into like larger prompts. That works out great. Like a small database to store all of the results, and just Dockerized everything, so it's a little bit easier to scale. Although we haven't done it yet, but like just Dockerizing it just makes it easier to scale down the line if you want to move to even bigger numbers, let's say. I think that's basically it. Just like a couple of really short key takeaways. this is my philosophy. Just start. It was a lot of fun for me, just like on a Friday or Thursday afternoon, being able to call the client the next morning, like, hey, what is this worth to you? And they were saying like, well, yeah, it's going to save us about 1.5 FTEs. And then I'm going in the back of my mind, okay, so I need to make a project proposal, what's it going to do? But you already did it, right? I already did it, basically. So that's nice. I had a nice evening hacking away with Python. And also, like, for client project, this is great. Scale fast. I think here, like, there's a lot of AI in the project itself, but also using AI in my coding, for me, is great. There's a lot of people that are quite skeptical about it for some reason. Certainly, it's like limited immensely. But just like, okay, so how does async work? And then being able to explain that, and then, hey, take this function and make it async, and that working perfectly. Definitely, like, Claude is my favorite programmer, and then I use the continue plugin in VS Code, testing out cursors high on my list. But it just makes me so much faster than I was before. I'm not a professional programmer, definitely wouldn't call myself a software developer, but it almost feels like it now. Right? I mean, I do have a solid background in Python for like 15 years. That definitely helps. But it just allows me to move so much faster. And the last thing, keep in control. This is tricky. I realize I didn't go into too much detail on this, but like the whole prompt management thing, trying to constrain the models to strict JSON output, all of these kind of things, is no joke. AI is like always quite impressive on the first try, and then you scale it, and then it breaks down, and you think you fixed it, and it breaks down again, and it just always wants to surprise you in small ways, just as children would. Again, coming back to the metaphor. And that's basically the short version of my talk.